Hey guys, so let's talk about Smackdown this Friday. So they started the show with commentary talking about the main event, which was going to be Roman Reigns versus Xavier Woods. Um, Essentially, kind of the same thing as last week, except it wouldn't be Jey Uso bending the knee, but literally Roman Reigns himself. Um, they hyped that, and it was a good thing to have as a main event. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we then had, in the ring, we had Natalya, Shayna Baszler, Shotzi, and Aaliyah. And they were joined by Sonya Deville, who one by one introduced them all and the fact that they were the women's team for SmackDown. She then introduced the last competitor for the team, who would be the team captain for the SmackDown team. That, of course, was the boss, Sasha Banks. Once Sasha made it to the ring, though, there was still that animosity between her and Shotzi, and Sonya tried to get that calmed down. But before she could even think about that, Naomi came out. Now, we all know that there has been the animosity between Naomi and Sonya, so they started heating up there too. And I almost wouldn't mind seeing Sonya Deville versus Naomi. And it wouldn't have been terrible at Survivor Series, but you could do it at a different pay-per-view too. It doesn't really matter. So the women are just going back and forth against each other. It's a total breakdown. They then went to commercial break, and as we kind of figured, there was going to end up then being a 3-on-3. So Naomi ended up joining Sasha Banks and Aaliyah. A lot of the women in this match got good shots in, and they all looked really strong. Now, this was Aaliyah's first match on SmackDown, so that's pretty important. She had not had a match yet, and she was named to the SmackDown Women's Survivor Series team, so that's pretty significant for her. The end result, though, was Aaliyah picking up the victory for that team, though, for her, Naomi, and Sasha. She's, of course, absolutely super thrilled about this. But we'll get more into that because that comes into play later. Then we had Sami Zayn in the back, and you can't really tell whether he's really talking to anybody. And it becomes more apparent that he's talking to the mirror. He's practicing his speech for the rest of the men's Survivor Series team, as if he's the captain and the leader of the team, and he's encouraging everyone. What is hilarious is Jeff Hardy ends up behind him watching the whole thing, and so he asks him, "So what do you think?" Jeff's answer was, "It sucks. It sucked really bad." I didn't necessarily think the speech was super terrible, but it was very condescending. I just thought it was absolutely hilarious that Jeff Hardy was just back there watching him, and then just his facial expressions as he's essentially telling Sami that the speech is no good. So that comes back into play later. So then Then we now head back to backstage. We see Roman and Paul Heyman walking backstage. This was essentially just Paul Heyman and Roman going into the locker room, and then Paul kind of talked down to Kayla. That was more or less that little bit. But we do then also go backstage to a different area where Aaliyah is being interviewed. This was a big moment for her, not having even had a match, being named to the Survivor Series team, and now you just won a 3-on-3 match. Your very first match, you were the one that got the pin. And especially against someone like Natalya. That's huge. So we then see Sonya Deville coming up to her. She then asked how long she had known Naomi. I don't know if it was just because she teamed with Naomi or what it was there, and maybe some of that will come into play next week. But it was after she had asked her about how long she'd known Naomi that she told her that she had just been informed that Aaliyah would no longer be on the Women's Survivor Series team. And the look on Aaliyah's face was awful. It really, truly was. Now, honestly, I don't think she's terrible. I don't. She needs some work. If you're going to be up against some of the best, it's going to take a little bit more than that. And I don't know yet who they're replacing her with. I've not heard anything more on that. Some suspected it could be Sonya Deville, and I don't really know if that's the route that they go, simply because there's more of a story there for her against Naomi, as opposed to her using this as a way to get on that Survivor Series team and actually getting back into a match on a pay-per-view. So I don't know that that's the route that they go. I think if they're going to do something with Sonya in a match, it would be something with Naomi as opposed to that. So I really don't know for sure who else they put in there. But hopefully, maybe we'll find out next week. We should, with any luck, we find out something on the show as opposed to something just leaked or put out there via Twitter. I wasn't super thrilled about the way that they just put that out there like that. Once again, of course, they recapped everything with Xavier Woods and Rowan and Jimmy and Jay last week, and how Xavier did get the win over Jimmy last week, and it was just another segment with all of that. But what did come into play here was a part of the stipulation. So what it said was that if Roman loses, he will bend the knee to Xavier Woods. And if Xavier Woods wins, he will have to acknowledge Roman as his tribal chief and as the king of Smackdown. Well, one thing that Heyman said was that they were going to up the ante, and that if Roman did not stick to that, they could strip him of the title. We'll see how this plays out at the end of the show here, because of course that's the main event, and a good main event to have. We then had a tag match. We saw Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs taking on Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza. This was a decent match. Both teams had some good spots. I don't know if it's necessarily. I mean, it is doing something for the tag division. I don't know that they necessarily want to push Shinsuke and Rick Boogs as a team. I don't mind them being a team for certain matches, certain things, but I don't know that they necessarily need to be a big player in the division, if that makes sense. So, in my opinion, having Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza pick up the win here was not necessarily a bad thing. And a win over Nakamura and Boogs is not bad either. So it was a decent match. It wasn't a very long match, but I don't know that it necessarily needed to be. So then we go back to Adam Pearce is asking Sonya why she took Aaliyah off of the Survivor Series team. She didn't really answer him, but just left. This is where Sami Zayn comes in. So he started going on to Adam Pearce that he didn't think he felt as though Jeff Hardy should be taken off of the team, that he didn't add value to the team, so to speak. Mainly just because he didn't like his attitude. So essentially what he wanted to do is to have Jeff Hardy taken off the team so that they could replace him with someone stronger. Which Adam Pearce agreed. Yes, let's make the team stronger. Absolutely. He said, and the way we need to do that is you're going to have a match against Jeff Hardy, and whichever one of you wins stays on the team and the other will be replaced. This, of course, does not go over well with Sami. No, he's not thrilled about that at all, because that wasn't what he meant to have happen. We then, of course, have more of a hype package for WrestleMania. Keep in mind that WrestleMania is still quite a bit of ways, but tickets are now available, so of course they're gonna keep trying to get those sold. We then came back with Charlotte in the ring. She had a lot of words for Becky Lynch. One of them going over different gimmicks that she's had. She was the last kicker. She was the man. She was Becky Two Belts. What else was she? Now she's Big Time Bex. And I didn't necessarily hate the line then, though, where she says, "But who are you really?" I didn't necessarily care for what came next. Was that she said she would get a new nickname, Becky Uh-oh. I don't know. It was too belittling, and I get that she is a heel and that that's part of what she's supposed to do. I just think she takes it too far, maybe. And if you're going to do that, which, okay, a Survivor Series, absolutely do that. But here's the thing. You need to then have Becky be able to respond. And that is when you have the pre-done segments. And maybe next week, maybe on Monday, tomorrow, we get a response from Becky. I think it would you'd just be better off doing pre-tape things like that. Where it can appear as though the person is there, even if they're not, to try to keep the superstars separated as much as you can to avoid them being in close proximity. I just didn't really care for the whole Becky uh-oh thing. We then, though, did see Toni Storm come out. This was after Charlotte tried to start calling herself the Star Maker. Because of all these women that she's been up against that have become stars, that have really hit it big, that have really found themselves. Toni said that she appreciates all that Charlotte has done as a champion, but the reality is Charlotte doesn't actually do any of that. All of these things she lists, she hasn't really. One thing she brought up was that Becky just put her title on the line at the show in Saudi Arabia. Maybe it was the Smackdown just before that Charlotte put hers on the line. But I almost feel like it was the week before that even. No, it would have been the week before that because Charlotte put hers on the line against Sasha. And then that following Monday, Becky had to put hers on the line against Bianca Belair. Unless that was the Friday just before the I don't even remember, honestly. But Charlotte had put hers on the line. And that was when she still held the Raw Championship. But it had been a while. Is essentially what Toni was saying. And that she wanted a chance. And Charlotte just said, absolutely not. It's not happening. I'm not putting it on the line. Personally, I would like to see Charlotte versus Toni Storm. And they could. It would have been nice for them to actually start setting up that next feud more so. Right now we know that Becky is going to be facing Liv Morgan. That we know. They did not set up a number one contender or anything like that for Charlotte. But maybe this means that her next opponent is going to be Toni. We don't know yet. That hasn't been said for sure. We will see. So then we go backstage. Kayla is talking to Xavier Woods. Essentially because Xavier has this match against Roman Reigns. But more importantly, there is no reason that Roman can't have people at ringside. He will most definitely have Paul Heyman at ringside, but there's nothing to say that Jimmy and Jay can't come out. So essentially, with Kofi out, Xavier Woods is potentially looking at a 3-on-1 handicap match. Essentially. So then we go back to Aaliyah in the back, and she's talking to someone on the phone about being kicked off the Survivor Series team. And that's when Mustafa Ali just starts talking to her about just falling from big highs and how everybody has gone through these things. And then Ricochet comes up, and he starts giving her some advice that it seems to me like she's more apt to listen to. Not that she didn't necessarily like Mustafa Ali's advice, but she just seemed to be taking to Ricochet's more so. Aaliyah would end up leaving with Ricochet, so hopefully that's good for her, and that will be able to build her up more. We then saw Sami Zayn versus Jeff Hardy. Keep in mind that this is the one where whoever lost was then kicked off of the Survivor Series team. It was a pretty decent match. It was okay. There were some spots where there were some counters by Sami Zayn. In the end, Jeff Hardy would come away with the win with the Swanton. I felt a little bad, honestly, as it's sinking into Sammy what it really meant. You're looking as it's dawning on his face, and then he looks up at the graphic on the Jumbotron to see his image being erased from the caption for the team. I don't know that Sammy was an awful pick for the team, but I don't really know who they put on it. They could put Sheamus on there. He is, I believe, cleared, and he wouldn't be an awful one to have on the team. He really wouldn't. So that's a possibility for who might take Sami Zayn's place. And I wouldn't hate it if that's what happens. Then we saw Hit Row in the back. They're kind of enjoying being on Smackdown, and they were kind of putting themselves over. That was when it cut to Jinder Mahal and Shanky, and they kind of they're really dissing on Hit Row. They essentially called it Cringe Row instead of Hit Row, but part of it, obviously, I didn't understand because part of Shanky's was in a completely different language, which is fine. That works for him. It's hard for us because we can't necessarily take the meaning from it, if that makes sense. It was kind of the way that Bad Bunnies came across when he was doing his in Spanish. Some of the stuff just didn't translate well. Shanky's, I think, went over a little bit better, but it wasn't great. I don't know where it's going. Maybe we're gonna see a feud between Hit Row and Jinder Mahal and Shanky, I could be okay. We then cut to Kayla, who is backstage with Ridge Holland. He has not had his first match yet, but I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they do with him on there. He has a lot of high praise for Sheamus. He had a lot to say about watching him when he was first coming up and stuff like that, and his style and all of that. He while they're doing this interview though, Cesaro comes up and he kind of was trying to talk Ridge Holland out of getting too close to Sheamus, and kind of warning him of what Sheamus can potentially do to tag partners and how he can turn on them and things like that. This, of course, has Ridge Holland essentially saying that he'll be a far better tag partner to Sheamus than Cesaro ever was when they were known as the Bar. And he told Cesaro, if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with Sheamus next week. He'll be here. So we are definitely getting we're definitely getting Sheamus next week, which is exciting. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if he'll have a match or if there will just be some backstage things between him and Ridge Holland, which wouldn't be terrible. It would not. And maybe there could be something with Ridge Holland and maybe two other people that might lead to a tag match, maybe. Hard to see. It's hard to say where they're going to go with that, but it'll be okay. Then Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, let's do a Raw Rebound replay from this week's show, and I don't remember what part of Raw that was that they were discussing. But then it went into the Roman Reigns and Xavier Woods match. There were some good spots. And toward the end, it looked like Woods was going to win, and he should have. But Roman was pulled out of the ring by the Usos. The officials, of course, saw this, and they called for the bell for DQ. So, interesting note here. There was nothing in the stipulations about a DQ finish. It just said the winner. Now, technically, Xavier Woods won that match. It was as a DQ, but he is listed as the winner of that match. Now, I don't know where they're leading with this, and I'm going to wait and see where they go with it, but I was not overly thrilled with the fact that, okay, so have the beatdown. That's what you're going to do when you have the Usos out there alongside their cousin. Of course, that's what's going to happen. You get that 3-on-1 beatdown scenario. I didn't care for the fact that they gave Roman the crown. Is he the face of SmackDown? Probably, maybe. But you went through all that trouble to have Xavier go through that King of the Ring tournament. You had him go through winning at Crown Jewel, only to essentially have it taken off of him and put on Roman Reigns, when technically he won the match. And if he won the match, Roman should have to bow down to him or kneel to him. That's the rules of the match. Technically, Roman did not follow the rules of the match, the stipulation. He did not. It didn't say that if it was a DQ finish, you could just take the crown and beat up your opponent. No. But I am willing to see where they go with it next week. There's more to it, I'm sure, and they could address that whole thing. Adam Pearce could come out and address that, and I don't know if he'll give the crown back to Xavier. They could do something similar to the match that they had with Shinsuke Nakamura and Baron Corbin, when Corbin lost the crown to Nakamura. I think it's too soon almost to do that, though, simply because do you really want to do that back-to-back tournament winners, first of all? And it's not that long since the tournament to begin with, so really to have that issue over this quickly is kind of weird, almost. And to try to do a match for the crown again is kind of weird. I don't know where they go with it. I don't see Roman willingly give it up either. But then what is the point of putting that on Xavier Woods in the first place? To do that, when you did that, that was pushing him, and that was what he needed. It was his time. And for what? To take it off of him and put it on Roman Reigns, who doesn't necessarily need it? We'll see where it goes. I'm willing to give it some time. I'm not gonna say right now that I absolutely hate it, just that I don't necessarily understand where they're going with it. But we will see. And with that, we close up our Raw review. Smackdown review. We will see you maybe Tuesday night. I'll do the Raw review for the Raw show tomorrow. So we will see you then.